Welcome to the Metal Collector. Today I'm going to show you 10 punk releases I have on my playlist at the moment. Stay tuned. Hail and well met to the Metal Collector. Today I'm going to talk about some punk releases I have on my playlist at the moment. 10. And to begin with, I would like to say that I do appreciate punk. I like punk rock and I listen to it. I actually played in a punk band myself a couple of years ago. That's another story we can take on another time. But I'm not thrilled about all kind of punk. For example, the 90s pop punk wave with bands like Blink-182, Green Day, Rancid, that sort of stuff. It's way too pop sounding for me and my taste. But I really enjoy listening to hardcore punk, really aggressive and speedy, up tempo kind of bands and stuff like that. And this playlist, I guess you can also get that impression from some of the stuff I'm going to show you. I also like a lot of the classic stuff, late 70s, early 80s, and punk was actually a very important part for the metal evolution as well. There is an album here among these that I've listened to quite often still, and you can easily understand why that was hailed as an early inspiration for some other bands. We'll get to that in a little bit. Let's just jump down into these 10 releases. First release, let's take this. This is my ultimate all-time favorite punk band, Ramones, and the album Subterranean Jungle. I think this is the 7th album they did. Johnny Ramone wasn't that thrilled about this album. I think it was they did 3 cover tunes on this album, and he was not a fan of that. But he liked his own guitar sound, of course. I like this album. It's got the fan favorites, Outsider and Psychotherapy, but the whole album in general it's a good album. It's not my favorite, I would say, though. My favorite will probably always be the debut album. I love that album. But most Ramones albums has something. So, and if I'm in a bad mood, Running Wild or Ramones, those two bands can always make me want to smile again for some reason. Now let's go to Germany with the band Hasleben and the demo CD Anti as Fuck. This is a very aggressive, raw sounding kind of punk. I really like it, and I've listened to this many times. The old band I was in, not the punk band, another band, played together with Hasleben at a Danish underground festival many years ago. And I saw this band, and they looked like scumbags. It was totally worn out leather jackets, and the pants were more filled with holes than pants, if you can say that, and big hair and all that. But they were nice guys, and we were talking backstage after the concert, and they gave me this, and it's, yeah, I don't know, it's very raw, and I actually don't know if the band still exists. I don't think so. I think they have dissolved some years ago. But if you can find this on the internet, or I don't know how many copies it was made in, but if you can find this, check it out. Especially the title track is really good. 6 songs on this, and it's so homemade. You can, a burnt CD. And actually that is, that's a problem with a lot of in those years, everybody could burn their own CDs and making cheap demos that way. The biggest problem is after 20, if you're lucky, 30 spins on the stereo, it starts to, you can hear it. It gets, it has some, it scratches and starts to jump in songs, and yeah, it's not very good. So remember always, if it's an old CD ROM, or an old burned CD, get the songs into your computer so you won't lose them. Just a little advice. Anyway, um, like I said, I was not a big fan of the 90s pop punk wave. Not at all. I have one band from that period, Offspring. The first four albums are pretty good. I still listen to them to this day. But there was actually also another band that had something that was okay. I still believe they are a little bit too pop in some ways, but I actually enjoyed this album. Um, About Time, that's the title, with Pennywise. This was the third album with the band and a big breakthrough. It's called the biggest skater album in among some punks. I don't know. I've never skated. Otherwise, I would have broken my legs many years ago. I wasn't good at that. But this album is actually pretty good. It still has this. I think the reason why I like it is because it sounds a little bit like Offspring and what they had been doing. And this is from, I can't even see what year it is. It's back from the 90s. I can't remember what year it was. I was not a big fan of Pennywise. This is the only album I have in my collection with them. I bought it because it was cheap and I've heard a lot of people speaking nice words about it. So I thought, yeah, I'll give it a chance. And to begin with, after first spin, I was not that blown away, to say the least. But I've put it on throughout the years, and today I think it's a good album. And actually, I don't think I'll ever be the biggest fan of this band. But I have, after been listening to this for the last couple of weeks, I've, thought about checking out the rest of the catalog. I remember way back when I heard other songs with the band, I was not sold over that. But I think probably I'll try and dig a little bit deeper into Pennywise to see what's down under what's in the discography. Anyways, the next band is one of my favorite punk bands, The Casualties. I love this band. Die Hards is probably also my favorite album. I don't owe all the albums, but I will someday because I'll still buy the stuff and I will complete this in my collection. The Casualties discography, aggressive like hell, and the whole attitude. This is hardcore punk at its best, I would say. I love the Casualties, and this album, I listen to this actually pretty often. And speaking of, here comes the grandfather of hardcore punk and that universe. Discharge with Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing. Yeah, the most cryptic title ever. A classic. If you're into hardcore punk, this is a classic and you have it in your collection, and I do as well. I love this album. Primitive, raw, angry, and everything. And this is the album I talked about, had an impact also on some of the early metal bands. Slayer was pretty happy for this band, and Metallica also dig the band. You can hear it. Both bands have done some cover tunes of the band. So these guys were I would say probably, if not the inventors of hardcore punk, definitely the most known act for those early years. This is a milestone in that, and you can only love this album. I do. I love this album, and again, it's timeless. I can put it on and still get a kick out of it to this day. So let's go to Denmark, my home country, for a little while. This band, the Nimwits, also have the t-shirt. Woohoo! The Nimwits with the second album, End of the World. End of the World. The first album was pretty good, and this is also pretty good. And I think this is, if not the best, definitely among the best punk bands we have in Denmark at the moment. The drummer is the old drummer from Artillery, Carsten, and he left Artillery and formed this band with a bunch of old friends. So They are nice guys to hang out with. We have a couple of friends and I have been working with the band, done some music videos for them, and they're fun to be around. And even though they say they are probably the oldest punk band in the world, I don't think so. But the oldest because they are all, except for one member, they're all over 50s. You know, or they are all in their 50s, except for one member. But I still think they can kick ass, and I still think this is good. This is also a little bit hardcore, mixed with some melodic inputs, mixed with some metal sounding inputs, mixed with some in your ear choruses, you sing along choruses. It's got a lot of, there's a lot of stuff going on with this, but I think you should check these guys out. It's a very, very good band, and another good, great CD. Let's stay in Denmark for a little while. This is an album I had forgot I had in my collection until recently, so I've heard it the last couple of days. Sweet Boys with the album Slump. This is the only album the band did. The band was three little dudes, and when I say three little dudes, I mean it. They were like 12, 13, and 14 years old when they did this album, something like that. They were kids, and even though you can hear it's kids playing, it's not bad at all. It's actually it's a pretty fun album, and the grammar, the English abilities, not that mine are pretty good, but but the English abilities are not that. There is a lot of failures in the lyrics, but who gives a shit anyway? Because it's fun to hear kids playing punk and actually do have a very good take on it. For example, Mental Hospital. That's a hit, and I'm fucking stupid. uh, Yeah. I think this is a pretty rare album. I think this is difficult to get your hands into. I don't know how many copies it was made in. I remember I bought this. I saw them on Danish television back in the 90s. This is from 96. I saw them in a Danish show about youth and stuff like that. And suddenly there was three kids, a little what is that called in English? Anyway, there was something with these kids, and you followed them through a rehearsal, and they were out playing, and they played that Mental Hospital song, and I was just like, holy Christ, I need to get my hands on this. This is a fun album. So yeah, check it out. It's not a must-have, but it's a fun little thing to have. So let's move along to the next one. Violent Affairs with the Cockroach Theory. This is in the same vein as the Casualties. This is hardcore punk, aggressive, brutal. Just want to rip your head off, and I love it. Great, great album. Frankly, I'm honest, I don't know much about this band. I found this vinyl on a homepage where it was cheap, and I thought the album cover looked cool, so I checked it out on the internet, and I liked what I heard, so I bought it very cheap. So that's it. But I think there was some 7 inches as well in the discography with Violent Affairs. And anyway, I need to find out more about this band if they're still around. This is from 2013, this album. So if you're into hardcore punk like Casualties and you don't know this band, check this album out. It's really, really good. And let's stay in the same vein with the Runamucks, Clawing Back. Also, yeah, it's the same type of punk, aggressive and hardcore, biting, speedy, raw, dirty punk the way I like it. This album is also very, very good. I have Inferno, that album as well with the band. I didn't know much about them until I also found this on the same page as Violent Affairs, and I bought these two at the same time some years ago, and still Really good. I know they also did another album. I think they've done a lot of albums. They are from the 90s. I think they were formed in the 90s, and then the first album is from 2001 or something. But there is another album called something with Breed, New Kind of Breed or something like that. I can't remember. Also, a very cartoonish cover artwork. That album, I checked it out on the internet, and that kicked ass. So that's the next thing I need in my The Run Amok's discography. I think I'll try and see if I can get all the stuff with these guys. This is very good. I think we'll end with a classic one, because this is the Damned's debut album. Damned. A classic one, we all know it, and I got it on vinyl recently through a friend that had, I think it was because he had it and he bought it again, so he gave this to me. And I said, thank you very much, now I have it on vinyl as well. So, and not so much to say, New Rose is my favorite song, but it's filled with great tunes. A little thing I would like to add. I think my favorite all-time punk album would probably be Sex Pistols, Nevermind the Bollocks. And speaking of Sex Pistols and the Damned, we have another band in that, what I call the trio of the English punk back then in the late 70s. The three most important British punk bands, and Sex Pistols, the Damned, and the Clash. Now, I know normally of those three bands, the Damned is often the band that is being forgotten or least talked about. Either you're a huge Sex Pistols fan with that one album, or you're a huge The Clash fan and are hailing everything that they could piss in a bottle, and it would just be like, yeah. London Calling. I have a problem with that, to be honest. I think let's take it out. That album, in many people's eyes and ears, is a masterpiece, a classic one, and it's not just within the punk rock community. It's also just in general. I have seen so many lists where London Calling is at least among the top 10 on top 100 lists or top 200 lists or top 50 lists or whatever, and on some of the lists it's actually on spot number 1. I just can't seem to understand it. I can't get it. London Calling, the title track, is a great song. There is a couple of other tunes on that album as well. I got it in my collection. I bought it because it was a classic one and I had to have it, but I was very disappointed, and it had never grown on me. And that album is, in my ears, so overrated, and I just, you know, it's like a band that decides to make a million songs and show people that they can play punk rock, of course, and rock and roll, reggae, almost country, soul, blues, whatever. And then people just exploded and say, oh, it's one of the greatest albums ever, man. Look what they can do. No, it's boring. Excuse me. I really just, I don't get it. And I think if I had to make a list about the most overrated albums ever, London Calling would be on that list in my world. But enough of that. Back to the Damned. This is a classic one, and I think we'll end the video with this one. I've heard it many times since I got this vinyl. So thank you to my friends who gave this to me. Always nice to get good presents. That was it. That was the 10 albums, punk albums I hear most at right now. That's the 10 punk albums I have on my playlist. It will change, of course it will. So in 2 months it will look different. Maybe I'll make another punk video there. But thank you for watching today, and we'll see you next time here at the Metal Collector. Remember, my English is just shitty today. Sorry for that. Remember, stay metal and a little bit of punk.